even though yesterday, and obviously this is post announcement, even though yesterday we all got caught up, I think, in the announcement of the general election. Now we know it's all all going to be on Independence Day, the 4th of July, etc., etc. Rishi's now a meme for life, probably, or at least maybe for the next year and a half. Who knows? One of the things that has been sort of got almost engulfed in this was that it almost seemed like at the very last minute, and there still is rumors it could happen. There still is rumors it could happen, that there is not a lot, shall we say, of happy campers in the Tory party. A lot of talks of pre-mutinies, trying to sort of see off Rishi. There's talks about, well, the whole reason Rishi finally did it, went for this, was because he could not keep these mutineers under control. We've talked about this before, about how Rishi Sunak only really had like one threat of, if you don't fall into line, I'll call a general election. And technically, as we said a couple of weeks ago, well, months ago now, he did that. So, hey, you only get to deploy that threat once before, you actually have to either do it, or, you keep on threatening to call one and you don't actually call one. But the threat of the mutiny in the Tory party still seems to be there, but of course, the tidal wave of the general election and news announcement has now subsumed that news, but it seems to be still bubbling on beneath the surface. So we're going to go and have a look at a piece on Conservative Home, because hey, it's the best salt mine around. This is where I need to get like a pickaxe and a miner's hat for the future. But again, maybe something else to add to my list of things to get. But yes, we are going to go over once again to Conservative Home to have a look at Henry Hill's take on this mutiny, and once again calling for some attempt at unity. But as we've said every single time, if you want a proper attempt at unity, you have to actually get in there and start banging some heads together, start doing some proper skull cracking. Remember, one of the reasons Margaret Thatcher was so successful in her premiership was because she had a hatchet man who she would dispatch and do all the kneecapping, shall we say, and all the threatening and etc. But yeah, there is no one like that. Has been no one like that in the Tory party for quite some time. Even Gavin Williamson and his supposed little black magic book, when he was deployed to do that, he didn't do that overly effectively. In fact, he was too successful and was gotten rid of. But hey, there you go. So we're going to go into this because, again, fights are going to break out. Trust me, these Tories are not happy. They are not happy. Expect more news probably about this, about how upset they are about this, that they were completely taken unawares by this, because it certainly seems that way, which is not a good sign for a lot of reasons. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But ultimately, there is going to be a lot, I think, of very, very unhappy Tories in the next couple of days, and some of them are going to be incredibly salty. And obviously, welcome to the salt mine that is Conservative Home. If it's your first visit, welcome. And of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on. Into the mines we go of Conservative Home. The title of Mutiny on the Titanic, which I think says it all. So, being Nostradamus is nice, but the sad thing is that you only get credit for it if you really commit to the bold predictions. Half measures don't count. Nevertheless, here's an observation that with hindsight, I'd wished I'd been bolder on. So, a couple of weeks ago, you may remember there was a big hoo-ha about they didn't boost defense spending in the budget, and that a lot of Tories became very unhappy about it. There was a big potential looked like brewing rebellion. So at the last moment, Sunak and Hunt boosted defense spending when they'd previously announced that they weren't going to. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle over that. This is what Henry Hill's referring to. So he says, Sunak and Hunt took a fair bit of political heat to try and resist the widespread calls from their party to now boost defence spending at the budget, only to pull now this announcement out of the hat less than 2 months later. Again, like I say, done the budget, we're not increasing defence spending, looked like there was a brewing rebellion. They tried to sort of see this off. But anyway, he continues. If Downing Street were actually planning to hold some sort of announcement back until the pre-election fiscal event in the autumn, why shoot this bolt now? A straw in the wind, perhaps, that the Prime Minister may yet be considering going to the country over the summer. So the next day, our assistant editor also made the case for now a summer election. Twitter was all aflutter, with the laurels of prophecy were now within reach. Sadly, Rishi waited just a month to make the big announcement, so it goes. Still, the die has now finally been cast. The Prime Minister has now forgone the certainty of reaching his 2-year anniversary in Downing Street and chooses to go when the country and the party is 20 points behind in the polls. Which, again, is not a good look. It is not a look. He's got an incredibly hard uphill battle. If you saw his speech, it's not like he's got really good things to campaign on. Even if he goes with the whole idea of, I got inflation under control, all you have to do to really stump it is, okay, well, what did you actually do to get inflation under control? Because you spent a year and a half just hidden under a desk, with your fingers crossed, you and Jeremy Hunt hoping against hope that inflation would go down. That's all you've got to do to sort of stump Rishi on that. But there you go. So, at least this timing now tallies with the analysis above. Behind the scenes, ministers were ordered to start work on manifesto pledges about 2 months ago, according to the Daily Mail. This explains how we went from a decidedly non-pre-election budget on the 6th of March to a rather random, sloppily presented defence announcement on the 24th of April. So, this date came 2 months ago. Or at least was planned, shall we say, 2 months ago, which sort of fills in with something that, I'd heard from my someone I know that said, they already know a date. They already knew that what was coming. This is why we heard succession talks have now started last week. So, hey, we'll see. Well, no, we have seen, shall we say, what that was right. So, anyway. It wasn't an auspicious start, really. Really. The rain, the tinny pop music, the police only managing to switch it off through halfway through the speech. The fact that Downing Street Grid yesterday morning led with an official advice to stockpile tin food and bottled water. Yeah, wasn't very, very good, was it? Wasn't a very good start to the campaigning, was it? I mean, is that what Rishi Sunak thinks, that things are going to be better with their government when he'd announced that previous morning? Not a really good start, is it? So overall, the whole thing looks like a complete loss of nerve. The best time for an early election was May, to try and coincide with the locals, and Sunak seems to have now let the wheels just turn after the window had closed. Really does seem like that. I know Phil has said that Sunak should have timed it with the local elections as well. I'm surprised he didn't, but we've been saying at some point this year there was going to be a general election, and now we know what it's going to be. But hey, things are sort of really going to kick off with the next over the next 6 weeks. And if this is as bad as it has gone, just imagine what the rest of the campaign is going to be like. Oh boy. So, little surprise then that MPs are furious. It wasn't just the Prime Minister that has fired the starting pistol on now the slenderest of pretext. that some good headline news of the interest rates has not even yet had the time to filter through to the voters in ways that which they care about. That is, as Tim Shipman reported, that they have had about at least 5 to 6 months to get a job, to plan their lives. They and they and they don't. Hundreds of them, never forgetting, of course, their staff, have now instead now only have 6 weeks and 6 weeks of hard campaigning at that. And for those who, of course, who choose to stay on anyway. And that's a fair point. MPs do rely on a lot of their staff. If you didn't know, as it seems to be the point, many didn't know that they had a general election coming. Well, potentially, if you work for an MP as a Conservative MP and they lose their job, well, you've got 6 weeks potentially left in your position. What are you going to do? Are you going to spend your time campaigning, or are you going to spend the next 6 weeks, sneakily trying to look for another job? I wouldn't be surprised if that plagues a lot of MPs and their own staff trying to retain them. So, what about, of course, the activists? Well, in our most recent survey, less than a fifth of respondents now favoured a summer election versus 3/4 who backed going to the country in autumn or later. So, yesterday's events will not have soothed any of these feelings if at least the reports of the London activists getting frozen out of Sunak's first campaign event are anything to go by. Wow. That's interesting. The fact that you've frozen out local activists from your first campaign event. Nor will their comrades in now the scores of seats which have not been selected even as a candidate obviously be best pleased with the fact that CCHQ can now impose one. Theresa May learned in 2017 how badly that sort of power grab can backfire, and she started the race in the lead. And of course, asking for tips. Are you part of the local CCHQ? Give us any tips you can, please. All in all, this now looks like a complete object lesson in the downsides of taking your entire party by surprise. Just as the weakness of the Prime Minister's main conference policies testifies to the problem of bypassing both his own departments and the wider right wing of the policy ecosystem. And that is one of the things that summed it up, that he's taken his own party by surprise. And this was why there was just so much upsetness. Talks, of course, about threatening to send letters into the 1922 committee because, hey, if this is the best Rishi can do, maybe changing leaders now might not be the worst idea. Although, I don't know, changing leaders during a general election campaign, they'd be mad to do it, but hey, it's the Conservatives. It's not like they've made sensible decisions before in a panic in the past. So, it continues. Cooking now everything up in the secrecy of the Downing Street bunker does not produce good results. Unforgettably, that is precisely the sort of lesson the bunker's best protects its inhabitants against that learning. Nevertheless, with all that said, conceding that both MPs and activists have just as cause to be furious with the leadership and the apparent plan to try and reverse the election announcement via a leadership contest is insane. For starters, even if it worked out, no lasting good would actually come of it. There's a reason our survey of 6 in 10 Tory members opposed trying to oust Sunak after the local elections. Even now, I do not think there would be appetite to do that. But once again, it's who do you go with? Who do you choose? Who's the next logical successor? And, quote, would they do better than Sunak? Especially during an election campaign. And remember, now Sunak has announced it. Now he's got the king to dissolve parliament. He's got that permission. You can't stop it. And it did seem that they tried to stop it with getting letters in, that they were trying to rush as quickly as they can to try and get as many people to send letters in as possible. That does seem to be the case. Doesn't seem to have actually happened or even triggered a contest, but who knows? So unless the Prime Minister could be induced to resign, and he has just now set his own Independence Day, thank you very much for that, there would be no way to remove him without yet another round of internal warfare in full view of the public. The prize would be a leader whose sole job would now be owning the upcoming election results. All the serious contenders to succeed Sunak would wisely want to seize the crown only after that guillotine has fallen. As exactly what we've said. They are all now waiting in the wings, waiting for that thing, and then they can come out and go, ha, see, that was all Rishi Sunak's fault. Time for a new start with me. This is why we've also heard people like Braverman, Badnoch, Patel, etc., all starting their own internal machines, gearing up for the leadership contest that is to come. But it wouldn't work. The internal procedures of the Conservative Party do not trump the prerogatives of the Prime Minister. Even if enough letters somehow were to trigger a contest and Graham Bradley were to admit it, Sunak would still be in office and have the right restored to him in this Parliament to call an election. Perhaps the rebels could try and force a vote of no confidence in his government, but the result would almost certainly be a general election anyway. And if not, just a few more months in office with a caretaker leader, having now disgraced themselves in front of the entire electorate that already favours holding the election. So even if you change leaders, even Henry Hill was like, yeah, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, guys. Who are we going to be? And now he's going to go into, okay, guys, we now need to rally round, get round together. That you've had almost 3 years of complete animosity, 3 years of like Cold War civil wars, with it threatening time and time again to become hot. And yet, time and time again, they have divided themselves, fractured themselves to a point, something we've been saying for years since Boris Johnson had caused this fracturing himself. And even going back to the Brexiteers who started this whole mess in the first place, they've got all of themselves to blame. All of themselves to blame. It's all their fault. Everyone knows it. Everyone wants to change. And even they, as in some cases, Frost put out even a really weird tweet where he had almost resigned himself to losing. Like, the election's been called, no, ooh, rah, rah, vote Conservative. It's like, yeah, Labour's going to win. And that was coming from Frosty. But anyway, he continues. There is, one supposes, the possibility that we can simply conduct both contests simultaneously, perhaps even defenestrate our leader in the middle of an election campaign. A heavy sacrifice indeed to make the case of having something really weird to put in the public law textbooks, given the way that the public would likely make of it. The fact is, time is up. The would-be rebels have now been trying to put a challenge together for months without success. They've had neither the numbers nor a candidate before yesterday's announcement, and nothing good would come of trying to find them now, even if they could. One last attempt at self-sabotaging tantrums would now be simply grossly disrespectful to all the activists who are about to go out and give up 6 weeks of evenings and weekends trying to fight for those MPs' jobs. And oh boy, I can guarantee you now, they are already doing that. Many MPs are already preparing for life after Rishi. They are preparing, if they do manage to win, they are preparing for life after Rishi, deciding who are they going to support? Are they going to put their hat in the ring? Is my political machine ready? Do I have my website ready to launch? Get it through this way. There is not going to be a lot of enthusiasm for many of these, should we say, key MPs who are sort of guaranteed to survive, like Badnoch. Is she seriously going to campaign for Rishi, knowing that she's probably going to have to run on a platform blaming Rishi for all his problems, while someone might turn around and say, but hey, just a couple of weeks ago, you were campaigning for Rishi. You were like behind him 100%. So all of a sudden, a lot of these Tory MPs are going to be like, well, I support Rishi, but, you know, keep him at arm's length. Keep him at arm's length. And that's going to be very telling for the next 6 weeks. Look at how many Tory MPs either A, keep Rishi at arm's length, or should we say, turn up to campaign in their constituency, watch them be mysteriously absent from all the photo opportunities. And that will be funny. So let's finish this off. So a rebellion, of course, in the next few days would be no mutiny on the Bounty, not least because Blight was an excellent captain. It would be mutiny on the Titanic, a justified anger at now poor leadership, rendered moot by events, and the iceberg will not renegotiate the collision. Perhaps, having been in power for so long, some have now forgotten that they will surely dislike a Labour government more than any Conservative one. So those accustomed to intercline warfare will have now lost sight of the fact that their real opponents sit on the other side of the house. The election ought to now very much clarify matters, as John Oxley has noted today, that it is only by sticking together and fighting for their lives that many MPs have now a chance of being returned to Parliament on the 4th of July. It's time to shut up and put up. Here's the thing. They are going to be fighting for their lives. Sticking together, I don't think so. The Tory party, for the past few years, has had numerous people come out and say, guys, enough of all this internal warring and civil warring. Remember, there was this exact same feeling put out before the local elections. Their unity lasted a week. It lasted a week. How long do you think, or how many spats are we going to get between Tories or, you know, disagreeing with policy or, well, that is our policy. I disagree with it, and I suppose he's our Prime Minister, but I think I might have better ideas. Oh, there's honestly, I think some people are going to keep very, very quiet and away from cameras. I think people like Badnoch Patel and etc. They are going to keep as far away from cameras as possible because they don't want to be asked the question, do you support Rishi Sunak? Because that clip, that recording could come back and haunt them in the future leadership contest. So this is going to make campaigning really difficult. They are not going to band together. Some might in their individual tribes, but not all of them. There's going to be fighting, and then afterwards, the civil war that has been long predicted, this Cold War, is finally going to heat up. And oh boy, is it going to be something to watch. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.